when I figured out that tricks are for kids.
It's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. This is the final undisrupted live from ISTE Live. Adam, it's been an interesting show. This is we're recording this, folks, 12 o'clock on Wednesday of ISTE. Last couple hours left. What are your thoughts? What was ISTE like for you this year? Coming back, first of all,
Yeah,
let's talk about the elephant in the room.
I don't see the elephant, but yeah.
It's this was your first real big event since kind of recovering from cancer. So
Yeah.
talk about what it's been like. You've been pacing yourself. Your wife's Christina, who's amazing, has been kind of keeping an eye on you too to make sure you don't overdo it.
Yeah, you know what? It was one of those things where I had ISTE on my calendar circled as a personal goal to try to be healthy and ready to attend. So I was so happy I was able to do it, be here
Yeah.
and not only be here, but participate in sessions, record podcasts. You and I were able to do some stuff last night at
Poetry
the
slam.
Poetry Slam. The only thing, people were asking me like, how you doing? How you doing? So it was really great to have everybody, really,
Yeah.
really checking on me, the whole family, if you will, really checking on me. But it felt really good to be here. And the big thing was really pacing myself, as you said earlier, understanding that I can't do everything in one day. I can't see everybody. I can't be everywhere. Really understanding and listening to my body. So that was the big thing I had to do while I'm here. But I feel like I'm back.
I feel like we should all follow that. Actually, the more
Yeah.
after my experience this time around, I'm kind of telling myself I need to really start monitoring that part of it too, just for my own mental and physical health. Like you can't do it all the time. I'm getting to an age where it's slowing down a little bit. So,
Well, there's only so many sessions you can go to. There's
right.
only so many meetups you can go to. There's only so much you can learn
Pivot
before
hall.
you have
Yeah.
brain overload. And one of the things yesterday, we did a session. Whose line is it anyway? And it was it was recorded. So if you're listening to this and you want to watch it, I think with your ISTE membership, you can watch recorded sessions. But the cool thing, Steve Dimbo, he got on the mic at the very beginning. And he told everybody, I apologize, but this session will not be aligned to any ISTE standards. We're just going to have fun and enjoy it. And so many people came up to us after the session and said they needed that after so many sessions on AI, on this,
Yeah.
on so on and so forth. They needed to laugh. They needed something fun. They needed a way to kind of just release. And that's what our session was for them.
Let's do our top 5 takeaways. What do you say?
Okay.
Okay, we haven't really prepped or planned this. It's just kind of an on the fly. We're gonna wrap up our podcast. I'm like, well, let's do it. So, I'll go first. I'll go first.
And we go back and forth.
We'll go back and forth. I'll do 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
If you want to do it that way, and maybe we can come up with the 5th one together. I'll start with number 1, and that is this year. AI is definitely here.
Yeah.
And last year we saw the first part of it where it was just like, let's look at some tools and ideas, and now it's actually getting to the point where we would see the next iteration, which is like, how do we use it thoughtfully, and what are the guidelines, and how do we? And I feel like I think someone told me that 90% of the session submissions were AI related. So for me, I feel like it's here, but I also feel like we've passed the peak of the hype cycle, and now we're getting into like where the real work is done.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I think one of the things that I got, especially like from the keynotes, some of the session, was the marriage of creativity with AI. I think it was a big emphasis in this ISTE around fostering creativity with the technology, and not just that rote memorization or using it to digitize work. It's really that creativity piece, because whatever the next iteration of AI, generative AI in our lives will be, it has to happen. It will happen from our students. It will happen from kids.
Right.
For these jobs that don't exist. We've always say that, but it is. It's jobs that don't exist. The job that I currently have right now didn't exist when I was in high school. So it's one of those things where, how creative are we going to be with this gift of AI that we have?
Is that your number 2?
The
marriage of creativity to AI. I'll say number 3 for me is there's been an under thread of teacher burnout. That conversation has come up a lot, not just teachers, educators, leaders, and then kind of expanding on that into like, how do we foster more leadership? I was talking to a CIO for here in Denver Public Schools, Dr. Richard Charles, and he said, he's like, the superintendent right now, it's an open market. I mean, there's so many openings because nobody wants to do the job. And so, again, my concern with burnout is that, more teachers are leaving. We have less in our, higher ed systems getting ready for teacher prep programs. So I think that's going to be a challenge. It's going to get louder every year.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you on that. And one of the things that I heard from a lot of sessions with tech leaders is that funding cliff that we've talked about,
Yeah,
and
that's it.
conversations
Big one.
around what are we going to do now, because it's here. We've been talking about it's coming, it's here.
Yeah.
The cliff is here, the money's gone. What are we doing? How are we going to sustain some of the things that we currently have in place? How are we going to be able to filter out what's working, what's not working? And I know, like with us at Future Ready, that was a lot of the stuff we were working on with school districts around the Future Ready plan, that sustainability
Yeah.
around. Now you're back to your original funding. So what are you going to do? How are you going to keep these initiatives up and running? If and how are you going to be able to determine what was working for kids? Because that's the big thing. It's like not just to keep the stuff because we got the stuff. It's, did the stuff actually work?
Right.
And if it's working, how can we keep it? I think that's where that was the thing that I was able to grasp from a lot of the sessions here.
Yeah, and you get that momentum from a pandemic. So you get all
Yeah.
the tools and the applications and the money and the funding and things, and probably found some new things that you weren't able to do before. Yeah. How do you keep the momentum going now that that cliff has come? And that gets to, I think, my number 5, which would be, tied to that is the vendor side of this. And so you and I work a lot
Yeah.
with vendors too. So we have a different lens. We have the educator lens. We also have the vendor lens. And I'll tell you, like, from walking the halls and going to the exhibit hall and everything, they're worried too. Their budgets are tightening up. So I wonder, it's going to be curious to see what educational conferences look like for you and I, the ones that we attend in the next year or two, because they know there's not as much money readily available. So now are they going to just disappear? Like, remember Apple kind of famously or infamously in the early 2000s, just like said, well, we're done doing conferences because it's just not a moneymaker for us. And so they just backed out of education, but they came back and now they do kind of sessions and
Yeah.
things. But
They do it. They do it light.
yeah. And I think, that's probably what most of these vendors companies are going to do. But I do see the big conglomeration of AI into the big players of Microsoft and Adobe and Canva. It's just going to continue to happen. I think next year we're sitting here in San Antonio doing this
Yeah.
probably. And I would imagine, my prediction for that conversation would be that we're gonna see that now the main players are really stepped up. I mean, they're getting there now, but by next year, I think we'll be there.
So let me ask you this: like, when you look at the sessions, and of course we didn't attend every single session because there were
There's a
far too
lot. I'm
many
gonna
of
go
them.
back and watch the recordings. I really am.
But what is something that you feel as though should have been or should be a bigger focus as we start talking about the implementation of generative AI in education? What should be something that should be at the forefront of most districts as we move forward?
I think there's still too much conversation on the fear of it and the what not to do with it. And
Mhm.
I heard a lot of panels and some of that, and I was on a couple. You and I were on a
Yeah.
panel, and a lot of it is just
Which panel?
it's blindsided by AI. It's got a new documentary
Yeah,
starring Adam and Carl. That's true.
it's out
coming
now.
It
It's
is
out
out.
now.
Yeah, Hulu, Netflix, and Prime. I'm joking. It's not on any of those that I
Yeah.
have yet. But
Can we
there's
win an Emmy for it? I was wondering, can we get an Emmy? I did. I want to have an Emmy in the
we
background
could
of our
win an Emmy for the
videos, like
podcast.
yeah, on our shelf.
I don't know why we couldn't.
Oh,
Let's ask somebody.
yeah,
Uh,
we need to win an award. So everybody listening, like, nominate this podcast
they have
for an
this
award. Yeah,
podcasting awards, like, and they do it in Vegas.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, we'll fly down one special guest.
Yeah, I mean, we got the jerseys and everything now, so that means we are official.
We're now legit.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're
For those of you
legit.
that are watching, those of you who are listening, we're wearing matching jerseys that
Okay, no, I
yeah.
totally stopped what you were saying, but you're going.
I know. I remember what I was saying now. Oh yeah, the fear. So I think it's still too leaning heavy with fear, and I think some of that is, I think it's one thing to acknowledge the concerns, but I think it's another thing to go and step in and say, okay, now let's get through it and figure out how to actually use it. I think we're still a little ways away from that. But like I said, I was excited that some of the early conversations around AI this time around versus last year was less about 50 tools, and it's more about, like, let's figure out how to use it and then think about applications and how to do this on a regular everyday basis with kids of all ages too.
Right. Yeah, for me, I think it's going back to the focus on our parents. I'm a firm believer that not everyone is having the same conversations that we're
Yeah.
having in education around generative AI and what it means and what and how to utilize it. And very often it's the most disenfranchised groups that aren't having the conversations or aren't being educated on this topic. So I think uh, as schools, we have a role to play in helping to educate our families or provide the resources so they can learn more about what generative AI is and how it can be utilized. Because it's not just something that happens during our school day. if they can incorporate that at home, if moms and
Yeah.
dads, uncles, grandmas, whoever can figure out ways to improve their social status with these tools, I think we have a duty to encourage the use of that, or definitely provide the platform so they can learn more about these tools. And I don't see that necessarily happening now. It may be happening, and I just haven't looked in all the places. But I definitely think that's an opportunity that we need to be able to seize as educators.
Sounds like the opportunity for a new book is what it sounds like.
Yeah,
We need a parent's guide to AI by
yeah,
Adam and Carl.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A
You-
picture book.
yeah. Paint by numbers. So we do something like that. All right, let's do our predictive. Let's do a predictive moment because I was kind of gleaning on this earlier. 2025, we're back here at ISTE in San Antonio next year. ISTE plus ASCD. It'll
Yeah,
be a
yeah.
full
Be
merger.
a double conference.
Double conference.
Double your pleasure, double your fun.
It's let's do a prediction right now. What do you think will be happening a year from now? Besides us being there, probably tired from doing too many things again. What is something you think is going to be a big thing in 2025? Because the
My
sessions are already due, I think, like next month,
yeah,
right? Probably so.
yeah. You know what? I still think AI.
It's hard to get away from it, right?
It's the thing. I
It's a
mean,
stink that can't leave you. It's how do you tell a coworker that that they just have the AI stink?
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, it's there. I mean, you're always going to have the digital citizenship conversations. How do we help
cybersecurity.
cybersecurity? But I think AI is still going to be the trump card that's out there on on everybody's mind.
But you're gonna say something else for a minute.
I had to stop
That was
that.
a hesitate. Hesitate. I think quantum computing and kind of the advancements of machine learning is going to be, which is part of AI too. I think that's kind of the next big thing. I don't know how it's going to affect education quite as much right away, but much like AI 10 years ago wasn't really affecting us that much. It's the next thing that's coming. I just don't know if it's and it's really tied to all of it. It's just faster computing power, being able to do things quicker and having certain tasks that we do every day more automated, which again may free up time for the parent at home or the teacher at school or the principal just struggling with whatever. So maybe it's still tied to that.
Yeah, but the only thing that worries me about that is the that goes back to funding, because
Yeah.
new computers requires more funding. Is going to create more of the haves and have-nots. And that's the great thing right now with generative AI. By and large, all the stuff is quote unquote free. Whether you're a Office 365 district or a Google district, you can utilize the Copilot or Gemini, or just Chat GPT. So those things are low cost or no cost. But when you start talking about the hardware components, and
GPUs instead of the
yeah,
CPUs. Yeah.
and you don't have that readily available funds, you're going to start seeing a separation between the haves and the
Yeah.
have-nots. So that's some things we really need to be thinking about as we move forward with what does technology look like in the classroom, what does technology look like in schools, um, and also really the infrastructure piece.
Right.
I know we have E-rate and things of that nature, but still we don't have schools that have the network capabilities to be able to do some of these things that are going to be required of them moving forward.
I almost wonder now if too there's going to be I think probably next year we might start seeing I started seeing a little bit of it this time. Next year, I think it's going to be a kind of a backlash or not a backlash. I would say probably just an opposition of AI, like saying, other than AI, do this. Like there's more human elements. I think I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I was at ASCD, this year, and I saw one of the booths of the vendors had said, our bots are powered by humans, not AI. So already starting to use kind of the anti AI as a messaging structure
Yeah.
for some of these companies that are going to so I think that may also be next year because of this year's overuse of AI. I wonder if ISTE next year the sessions look a little more balanced with SEL and teacher burnout, some of the things we talked about already today. And then maybe of course AI will be a part of
Yeah.
it, but
And here's the other piece that I wanted to throw in. We're talking about things that we didn't see or would like to see. And in education, we really try to keep it like apolitical in nature, but we really need to just be more political advocates for what works for our students.
yeah,
Especially when we start talking about the funding. I mean, we have this funding cliff because people, elected officials, have decided
they're not
that
going to give us any more
they're
money.
not, yeah,
Yeah.
and we put them in those positions. So we need to let them know that this funding is something that we do need in education, and that needs to be a priority because we talk about various things, whether you feel about the border, inflation, this, that, and third. But we need to hear more conversations on our presidential debates about what does it look like for funding in education? What does it look like to ensure that our students have the resources, our teachers have the resources that they need? Because right now we are seeing an increase in salary across the board in a lot of states for educators, which is great. We want
Yeah,
to
we
see
needed it.
more funding in the field. Because I look at what new teachers are making now versus what I made my first year, and I'm like, what? That's
Yeah,
like twice as much as I
it is
made.
twice as much. Yeah,
But it shouldn't come at the cost of the resources that the kids need. And I don't think that's what's happening. But I don't want districts to say, oh, okay, we need to compensate our teachers. That's why we don't have new computers.
yeah.
We need to compensate our staff. That's why we don't have the appropriate resources in the classroom.
I think too often when we have that discussion in a large audience at an event like this, it's like, well, we just, the funding cliff is coming. You're right. We just all kind of presume like, yeah, well, it happened to
Yeah.
us, so we just have to deal with it. Versus what you're saying, which is like, no, take more action before it happens. Go to the midterm elections, the non-presidential elections, go to the primaries, and actually put in the people that are going to support education and rally. And then we don't have to have this like, well, it's just happening to us. There's nothing we can do about it. It's so frustrating. And as someone who's involved in local community politics now in Austin, and trying to grow my little community there, I could tell you that it's great to see. It's good to do it, but it's hard. It's a volunteer job.
Yeah.
So nobody wants to do that kind of work, but it's what you have to have happen to get any change to happen.
But we all know how important it is to have an educated community and how it helps the funding of a community. A well-educated community is going to be a community where they're going to have better paying jobs.
Yeah.
You're going to have more resources and all things. A lower educated community, you're not going to have those resources. Very often, you're going to be impoverished. So it's one of those things where if we want to really fix the economy, it needs to happen through education. The more educated we are, the more resources we'll have available, the better decisions that we'll be able to make as a society. That's just Adam on his soapbox moment, but we really need to work on those things.
Well, we should take the 22 billion in healthcare and put that over into. I'm sorry, don't get me started on that either. As I'm
Yeah, how's your tooth doing?
Hey, feeling good. That's in Mexico. It's great. Got it taken care of there.
Trust me on healthcare. I've been
Oh
through.
my God,
I've
you've
been through it. I've been through it.
Tapped out. Are they going to let you? You can't get sick anymore, right?
Yeah. I've maxed out all my healthcare benefits.
Well, yeah. Well, listeners, we don't usually get too political, but I do think what Adam's talking about is important, and I think that's a conversation that we have to, maybe raise up even a little bit higher. And one thing I'll say is that the people that aren't at these things are the people that need to be here,
Yeah.
are the legislators, how do we get more of that? And I know Future Ready does a lot of work with state and federal on that. So maybe that's we just continue that, push that conversation. You're on the
Yeah.
ISTE board. We both know Richard Collada pretty well. I mean, having conversations with like, how do we get more state level representatives in here to hear the message? Because this is a great event. I mean, it really is. And it's really well run and it's a great community, but we need to expand it, make the table bigger.
Yeah, because we don't want to have an echo chamber for these events, because that's what happens a lot of times.
A lot of times.
Because everyone that goes to, whether it's an ISTE, ASCD, a Future Ready event, a lot of times you're already kind of sipping the Kool-Aid, if you will. So you believe in what you're seeing here. We need to get the people who don't know about this stuff, like you said, here, so they can start believing in it, so they can start drinking the Kool-Aid and start making their own Kool-Aid in their communities. I mean, that's really what we need if we really want to start kind of having that transformational impact in education.
It's going to be an interesting time. We got a few more episodes, guys. This one's going to come out. Of course, this will be done by the time you're listening to this, but we had a few more coming up to finish out this season, and then we'll be back with a season 9, hopefully, if they'll have us. We still haven't gotten canceled yet, although last night, I have to just share this with our listeners. We did exchange poetry at the poetry event without reading each other's. Adam was very nice.
Mhm.
I was not so nice. I wrote some pretty rough stuff, and then when I saw his, I was like, man, he was all sweet. Yours were so nice, and I'm like, I feel bad that I made you say all those words on stage.
Yeah, we will not repeat our poems on the podcast.
No, we can't. But it was a fun bit. We'll try to bring it back next year. But thank you guys out there, as always, for subscribing and listening. This has been the Undisrupted Podcast, brought to you by All for Ed. He's Adam, and you can follow him at AskAdam3.
And he's Carl, and you can follow him at Mr. Hooker. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, we are better together.
We are better.
Undisrupted.